technology, engineering, the arts, and mathematics, and did I leave a letter out? S, science.
Yeah.
And we're so privileged to have not only a rock star musician, but an up-and-coming scientist that is going to share with us a little bit about world-changing, non-recreational use of mushrooms and the whole fungi industry. We have with us today in our studio, we coming to you from downtown San Diego, and what's your name again?
Morgan Rockwell.
Morgan Rockwell. Sounds like some type of drink I would get at the end of a great day. Man, I had such a great day. Pour me a Norman Rockwell. Norman, it's great to have you in studio today. How are you? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
We've known each other about, I would say what?
6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, some weeks.
I think in months.
2 months, two and a half months, 2.3 months.
And you're kind of growing on me. You kind of annoyed me when I first met you. But
thanks for your honesty.
You're an acquired taste.
Yeah.
But the more that I learn about you, your capabilities, your accomplishments, and that's what we're going to talk about today, what's important to you and what you can tell us about this world-changing, non-recreational use of mushrooms.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and you own a company called Mycosoft, is that right?
No,
Mycosoft?
Mycosoft. You gotta get that first acronym right, or I'll get sued by Bill Gates.
How do you spell that?
Mycosoft. Myco, which is short for mycology, the study of fungi.
Did I screw up today? I thought I was with some Microsoft guy.
Yeah.
Maybe get some benefits here.
Maybe one day.
Why Myco?
I think it is the closest word to representing the science of fungi. Like, fungi really reminds people of the mold on their toes, so it's kind of a scary, dirty sounding word. And then mushrooms really ignite this idea of psychedelia in people's mind. When you study fungi, you're called a mycologist, and mycology is the science of fungi. And I think the word myco is the best four-letter symbol of the industry that we could get.
M-Y-C-O.
Yes.
Okay. Far out. Okay. What I would like to have you do right now, your name's Daisy?
Morgan.
It's just
like Captain Morgan,
Sort of summarize. We're going to talk a bit today, but just summarize the takeaway. Let's say one of our listeners has to go away in about the next 90 seconds.
Yeah.
What would you want them to take away from our time today?
I think my mission now is to educate the world on the existence of fungi. I think most of the world doesn't realize that fungi exists underneath their feet, in their nose, on the ground, in the air. And I think, unfortunately, we're not even taught of the fact that it's there. So if I could bring awareness to the masses.
I guess I didn't ask this clearly. I'm sorry to cut in here, but you're working on some amazing technology, right?
Yes.
Can you just summarize that in about 90 seconds?
Yeah, we are building the tools to study mushrooms and fungi out in the field instead of in the laboratory. So just like trees and bugs and cows are outside, unfortunately fungi get studied in a petri dish in a lab too much. It needs to get studied out in the dirt next to the trees with the deer walking around it. And I think the tools are missing for that to be done. So that's what we're working on at Mycosoft.
Tools to do what? Do you dig them up? Like farm tools? Do you need hose? Can I buy this stuff at Home Depot? What are we talking about tools?
Well, I'll summarize it like... in 1849, men wanted to go find gold in the rivers in San Francisco, and the guys that sold the pickaxes and the shovels made more money than the gold that came out of the ground. Fungi is very valuable tissue. Truffles are worth $4,000 to $10,000 a couple grams of mushroom that is found under the ground. You got to dig it up and find it. You got to train a pig or a dog to go smell it. Now, if we could have a machine that could smell a truffle, if we could have a machine that could take those spores and regrow them at home, like in your garden, or if we could have a machine that is collecting spores in the wind and telling you if some dangerous fungi has blown in front of your house or your farm, those tools are useful to the world if they exist. Right now, we're building those tools because, unfortunately, they don't really exist.
Okay. So would you say this is kind of like a minesweeper for valuable mushrooms that can be used for your technology, which, if I get it right, if I've listened to you correctly over the weeks, produces energy, renewable energy? Is that right?
Yeah, in a sense, there's so many different fungal things that can be done with different fungal organisms. It's a very broad thing to say that a mushroom could be used for this or a certain fungi could be used for this. And really what we're trying to solve initially is what's out there, where to store it, and how to give it back to people. Once that kind of becomes an industry norm, then we start finding what mushrooms are useful for food or for medicine or for industrial things. And then, unfortunately, I have a very mad science long-term view of mushrooms, and the long-term view would be growing materials, growing electronics, growing batteries, growing light bulbs. The conductivity of a mushroom is very important, but that is some, unfortunately, very far off science. It needs a lot of science and a lot of engineering and a lot of tools to understand that potential. Right now, we just think of mushrooms as food, as medicine, as poison, but in reality, they're electrical beings that we can grow and grow into certain things we want to use.
Now, fantastic. So you really wouldn't work with it once you get it. You pretty much want to identify it, harvest it, and then some other smart people around the world. For example, what's getting really big now as an athlete, I do triathlons, is the nutritional value of mushrooms.
Yeah.
And like you shared with me when we first met, don't eat portobello mushrooms. Now, why do I not want to eat portobello mushrooms?
Viagra. Okay, as an athlete, the Viagra mushroom may have some protein in it, but there's that mushroom nutritional value. For some reason, gets your blood pumping, but also oxygenates the blood, wakes you up. That mushroom is used. There are mushrooms as an athlete by many athletes now, like coffee shops. That's the mushroom you should be eating if you're an athlete. Now they were being farmed on sawdust. They oxygenate the blood. They also get the libido
beneficial mushroom.
In the Himalayas, they call it cordyceps. And then
somebody, let's say I'm in Boulder, Colorado, and I want to take your, how would you call it? Would you call it elements? Would you call it?
Well, it's more simple. Like, there are companies that grow those mushrooms. There are companies that want the raw materials out of those mushrooms. The problem they have is the source, the spore. The original piece to grow a whole farm of those mushrooms needs to come from somewhere. And it usually takes a guy in the woods to find one. He puts it in a petri dish, preserves it, and hopes that people buy it from him before it dries out. What we're trying to solve is, if we find something unique like that in nature, we preserve it, we clone it, and we have it ready almost like in a vending machine, so that when that company in Colorado wants to grow 1 million pounds of cordyceps, they don't have to go search for little garages and amateur refrigerators that have it. They come to us as the supplier, the spore bank.
Because those scientists probably aren't passionate about getting out into the forest and getting dirty. They want to be in their science environment with their petri dishes that's sterile and everybody's wearing a white suit type thing, and that's what they want to spend their day doing.
Yes.
Not the first part of the week in the forest and the second part of the week in their lab.
So there's an example of the guy that goes and walks the woods looking for mushrooms, the forager, and then there's the guy in the lab in the lab coat. What we're trying to do is connect the guy in the woods that finds a mushroom with the guy in the lab with the lab coat. We're the middleman that's going to take that mushroom, put it in a state where it's lab friendly, and send it to the lab. Now, if the lab finds some benefits in that, they're going to give us that back, data and tissue, and we're going to distribute it to farms and people who want it. So we want to be the segue between the woods and the lab.
Okay, far enough. Hey, we're up against a commercial break. Hold that thought. I want you to repeat that when we come back. But we got to have a word from two of our sponsors that help bring this show live to you. So what do you say, Johnny? Bring up those sponsors. Hey, everybody. Are you familiar with the ship that doesn't sink? It's called Partnerships. Brought to you every week. We believe in individuality. And that's why you do not want to ever get into a partnership, because it's the only ship that doesn't float. We're also brought to you by the bees that don't fly. They're called wannabes. Usually it's where a hostile pitch panel starts hammering somebody who's giving their passionate idea in front of an audience, and they ask them questions that the speaker can't answer. That's called wanna-be. The bee can't fly. And now we're back into the studio learning about the world-shaping non-recreational use of mushrooms.
There you go. That's a good one. I like that. It's a new statement for me too, non-recreational use of mushrooms. It's an important thing because I do wear a lab coat, but I also go in the woods and I find mushrooms. And unfortunately, both groups of people always ask, are you talking about magic mushrooms? Is this the conversation we're having right now? And I think non-recreational use is a good buffer to get that out of people's brains.
Can I just decode the giggles that are in the background?
Yeah, sure.
For the audience.
Yeah.
I didn't have mushrooms before this podcast. I had one bang, okay? And it's actually not the type of bang that I usually drink. It was a berry blast. I usually have, guess which bang that I drink before I try and do stuff.
All I know
important.
is those things are full of taurine and sugar.
Purple Haze.
Oh, see.
I had one lady at the club one night when I was performing, and I put my finger on 3 words before I started my set. Okay, I had a can of, it said, I put my finger on bang, and then the type of bang drink it was, Purple Haze. Finally a woman that got it, because I said bang, Purple Haze. Okay, there we go. Go back, what were you talking about again?
Non-recreational use of a mushroom.
Yes.
I think Americans are not raised on mushroom culture. I don't know if you have any friends from Korea, Japan, or China.
Yes, Japan. Shiitake.
So, Japan, particularly from birth, you're raised on mushrooms in your food, and a plethora of different mushrooms. So when you hear the word mushroom as a Japanese child, you don't think of one mushroom like Americans think of portobello or the Mario Brother mushroom. They have this broad view of, mushrooms are a multiplicity of things that we eat and have. Americans, unfortunately, get this emoji, the red mushroom with the white dots, the Amanita, which is from Mario Brothers, but it's also that's where I learned about it as a kid. But it really detracts from the fact that there's food and medicine and a whole culture built on fungi that the Americans are really deprived of because of the portobello and that emoji mushroom.
Well, I have 11 years in Japan total time, and there's actually a cartoon heroic figure called Shiitake Man.
Yeah.
And he's always solving the problem, solving the drama, which really builds up. But definitely not portobello, right?
And really, the shiitake mushroom is good for you. It's not just protein like the portobello, but it has nutrients in it that could remove your tumors and really help stomach problems and different things like that. And it makes you wonder, why do Japanese people live over 100? We have the more centurions in Japan than anywhere.
Okinawa.
Probably because of that mushroom diet. It really is a good immune system tool to fight bacteria and viruses your whole life.
Until they adopt American culture and eat our food.
Yeah, you get
they
preservatives.
Start dying in their 70s and 60s like we do.
Well,
yeah, you're absolutely right.
America's like a chemical food society since the 50s and 40s, and it's the preservative thing. And then, fungi, like I said earlier, makes you think of moldy things, like maybe moldy bread or mold on your toes. Yeah. It's because it's the thing that breaks things down. And America has got this backwards chemical culture of preserving food, like the McDonald's burger that will last for 20 years and not mold. Why is that? Why won't fungus eat a McDonald's cheeseburger after 20 years? It's the preservatives. That's what it's doing to your body. And we need to have a good relationship with fungi, because We could eat it for 100 years and live to 100 years healthily, or we could not eat it and live on chemicals and we'll die at 40 and mushrooms will be eating us in the ground.
Yeah.
So it's a lifestyle choice.
Yeah. Let's switch tracks a little bit. We talked about the nutritional benefit of non-portobello mushrooms. When I asked earlier why we shouldn't eat portobello mushrooms, did I hear you correctly when it says because they're the only mushrooms that grow off of dead things? Is that true?
All of their cousins, that master species, the kingdom that a portobello is a part of, they're called secondary decomposers. They have a very scientific name, but basically portobellos and mushrooms like portobellos eat things in the ground. They decompose them. So that's their job in nature. They break down the dead deer carcass. They break down the insect bodies. You know, a bunch of worms die in the ground for whatever reason. A portobello mushroom will eat that. That's what they're good at. They break that down into soil so that plants can now eat those nutrients out of the soil. But the shiitake grows on wood. It, in a sense, is breaking the wood down, but it is pulling the oils out of the wood. It is decomposing the wood, which is a hardwood, which is going to take a lot longer than decomposing some fleshy thing in the ground.
Yeah.
So all of them are decomposers, but the wood ones are doing it in a way that those are the ones that have the most nutrition. When the portobello is...
Because woods don't get toxic so much like a dead carcass.
Pretty much.
Okay.
It's because of bacteria and virus. Trees are very immune from those things, but a carcass is not.
Yeah.
The bacteria and virus and fungi all work together to do their jobs. They break things down. They eat things. All of us eat things. Fungus are just the most efficient eating machine on Earth. They've been eating the rock and turned it into soil long before anything else was alive on the planet.
Okay. Within shiitake, because when I was in Japan, I thought that was the word for mushroom, but it's just a type, right?
Yes. Yeah.
There's other types in Japan that grow, right?
Yep.
But pretty much not portobello.
They do, but they wouldn't call them that. They would be like a cousin of a portobello, like a button mushroom. You know, there's many names in Japan and in China and in English for the same mushroom. But that's where the science is missing, the taxonomy, what is what. We know the difference between a poodle and a German shepherd. They're visually obvious. But unfortunately, a portobello does look a little bit like a death cap, a white mushroom that will kill you. And it takes a little bit of expertise to look at those two white mushrooms that have almost the same shape and go, that one is food, that one is poison. A poodle does not look like a German shepherd. Well, a shiitake does not look like a portobello, but there are portobellos that do look like poisonous button mushrooms. So the science and the words and the identification of them is the biggest problem with fungi, is because a cannabis plant obviously does not look like a tomato plant or a hops and barley plant. Like hops and cannabis and tomatoes are cousins of each other. But tomatoes and cannabis and hops look very different and taste very different, but they're related. It took someone years to go, well, they're related, but they're different. The same thing is happening in the mushroom industry.
So would it be fair to say that the bad mushrooms in Japan didn't get the take added to the name? They were just
that's what the word means.
The first part of the word. I
Yes.
can't say it because this is a PG-13 rated podcast.
Yeah.
But I do have an interesting story to share about Beethoven.
Yeah.
I was in Chicago in December, and did I tell you the story about Beethoven?
No.
Okay. He was found. He died gripping his writings of his great works, his poetry, his music. And someone asked, why did he want to die holding his writings? And the answer was, he wanted to die also the great decomposer.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Your mushroom jokes are getting better.
All right. Thank you. We are going to take a little commercial break. We have a great advertisement for you because happening this summer around June of 2023 in the city and state of San Antonio, Texas, is going to be the first ever cybersecurity academy called CyberWorks, because in the world of cybersecurity, there's known as this odd species of analysts, of certification and degree peacocks. They have these beautiful resumes. They are great on interviews, but then the company hires them and they can't solve a problem. And that's going to be the focus of CyberWorks. They are going to solve problems. They will be given degree and certification level instruction, but the focus will not be on passing tests, but passing a lab designed by yours truly, Purple Haze. We'll have more to say about CyberWorks Cyber Academy a little bit later on, but we're going to hear now back from our two sponsors before we get back to Morgan Fairchild. And now, it's another word from your lovely sponsor, your motivating entrepreneur, the bees that can't fly, wannabes. And we're also brought to you by the ships that don't float, called partnerships. And now, back live in the studio, take it away, Morgan.
So one thing I would love to talk about is what we're actually building at my company, Mycosoft.
What if I don't want to talk about that?
Well,
I kind of dig my jokes, man.
I'm trying.
You look nervous. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm trying to raise money.
Are you cold?
So it's always a nervous thing to start a business from scratch. So I've actually been trying to build this company efficiently since 2014, and it's only in the last year or two that I've put some structure to it. And so that's why, I'm talking to dudes like you about it.
Yeah? So, if you had 3 needs, there's probably more needs that you have.
I'm a very needy person.
But if you have, and, we never want to come across, especially in the dating world, as needy.
Yeah.
But concerns or things that would accelerate your progress, could you tell me 3 of them in 90 seconds, Morgan?
You don't want to be needy in the investment world either. I think the best want that a company could have is good people. The biggest problem I've dealt with is finding good people. People of quality, people of skill, people of, I think, maybe we're in an economic situation where some of the best people in the world are hiding under rocks, and we have robots and AI replacing everyone's jobs. So being surrounded by good people is the lifeblood of a business, especially an efficient business.
Well, what do you mean about...
That's my first ask.
Is what?
People.
People.
Yeah.
You need employees, what do you need, people?
Well, a business usually wants money, and if you had an unlimited checkbook or a Black American Express card where you just had unlimited funds, you would incentivize the best people in the world to come work for you. Mm-hmm. And that's not how a startup exists. You need people who are willing to sacrifice some of their time for lack of money.
What type of, technical people, artistic, what do you need?
Well, the company that I envision 100 years from now would have all of those types of people you could imagine. Right now we would need developers and mycologists. We're building computer software, hardware that talks to fungi. So we need fungal experts, mycologists, but we also need software, hardware, computer experts. In the long run, Mycosoft to me is going to be a platform for farmers, for scientists, for chemists, for material design people, for artists, because fungi is so broad-ranging, it will touch every one of those subjects and industries. So if I had a budget to pay 1,000 people today, I would hire someone from all of the walks of life. But today I need someone who can write code, who can solder, and who knows how to grow mushrooms in a petri dish. Those are the 3 core skills of a person.
Is that documented anywhere? Is it posted? Can somebody find out? You go to your website?
We haven't publicly asked for that because really, the next thing that would be asked for is business partners. Investment strategy is important. I'm not going to want to hire people until I can pay them. Yeah. And at the moment, me and 3 other partners are this company, so it's not just me anymore. And the incentives to keep those 2 other people going is equity in the company until investment is given to that equity, where we can borrow money, we can build the liquidity machine to pay out interns and pay out engineers, because right now we're contracting third-party companies.
You've had a fascinating career. You've done IT, you've done various types of technologies, Bitcoin. Yeah. Of course, the lab goes without saying. Do you still have an ecosystem of people that you know on LinkedIn?
I do. Okay. And like I do have a longevity in the Bitcoin industry, and I do have the 3rd largest Bitcoin company by following on LinkedIn.
And why I asked that let's just say of each space that you've been involved with, you were even involved with the government.
Yeah.
Are there at least 2 or 3 people in each of those verticals that know what you're doing right
100%.
now? Yeah, okay.
100%.
So have you ever thought of just interviewing them and just saying, giving them the equity talk, or at least let them know your vision and how there's probably an opportunity around the door?
I have in subtle ways, but I'm getting to the point now that I have enough structure to do that more formally. Actually, this incubator that the company and me were in recently helped put a lot of structural integrity into the company, especially planning and dealing with people. This was the first time I had a lot of face-to-face presentations of the company's goals. It makes you think about pivoting. What's the company's best product and service to make money? And in the long run, I have to model this as a whole new concept, not really compare it to the things of like Google and Ford and Apple, but compare it to Intel inventing the computer chip, or compare it to Carnegie finding oil. It's not just a company to me, it's an industry level change. It's going to be the thing that makes the horse not want to be our transportation mode anymore. Fungi will disrupt so much that I have to take a step back and go, what's the best way to make money doing this, without shooting ourselves in the foot that's all we're going to do for the industry. Because I believe that all of those tools are needed to help all of the industries that touch fungi. And what I know is, first to market, there's no one building these tools, at least the way I envision they should be built.
Exactly. Good. So was that 2 things so far, or just 1?
People, definitely money, and the third...
With money, okay, how much by what timeline?
All of the money by yesterday. But in reality, we've done 2 pitches which floated between $500,000 and $5 million, depending on the amount of shares we do an evaluation with. I'm not naive of the venture capitalist world because of what I did with Bitcoin over the years. I did a lot of presentations to VCs, and I know that Uber was a $120 billion valuation and still to this day is not profitable. So the people that hand money to new businesses in good times of the economy are not concerned about profits. They're concerned about the public's view of this thing. Uber is going to have self-driving cars one day. They don't care that their drivers aren't making money now. They're going to be a world-changing thing. Yeah. That's why they had an evaluation and they're unprofitable. To me, Mycosoft has that same potential of being world-changing because of fungi, and the profitability has to be expressed to someone who wants to give money. Like, this is an evaluation, long-term 100-year plan. If you want us to make money, here's some short-term things that can make money, but really our equity is worth something, and that's the long-term way to make money, in my opinion.
Okay. Before we get to our third item is, and we'll have this added to the bottom of the link in YouTube, but could you share with the listeners, you have a website where people could read along with your vision?
Yeah, Mycosoft.org.
And spell that for
Mycosoft.org.
Mycosoft.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
.org.
Oh, .org.
Yeah.
.org.
We're not going to pay for the .com until we get money.
Yes.
Because the .coms are very stupidly expensive in the time and age.
Yeah, but .org.
We're an organization. We haven't made a profit. We're considered a scientific R&D organization at the moment. I've structured the company as a Delaware C Corp, as LLCs. We have entities to build an investment package out of the company, but when you have .com, it's commercial. It's making profit over the internet, and when you have .org, it's really marketed as an organization that's not making money. So that's kind of just the best way to start the company in that way in the internet world. Also, we have the trademark of Mycosoft, so we could get the .com by some letter one day. Mm-hmm. We definitely don't want Microsoft to be upset and sue us, so the trademarking world is important. But I believe that word really embodies what the company is doing. We're building the software and hardware that works for mycology.
So there, Myco, Mycosoft, Mycosoft.org. So the number third item?
Changing the
third item, not the number third.
Changing the perspective of fungi. So the marketing, I think, is the third most important thing that we have to tackle as an organization. We just had the most popular TV show in human history, The Last of Us, more watched than any show ever, which is about the cordyceps fungus mutating and turning humans into zombies. So the whole world that have never heard of that mushroom, the word mycologist was put into the show. Oh. So now the common man... Can
somebody go watch that show right now?
Yeah, it's on HBO Max.
Only HBO?
Yeah, okay. It's their series they specifically made at their studios. Okay. So it gives a little bit of a mycophobia boost where people are afraid of fungus. It could turn you into a zombie. And so it's kind of done a little bit of a negative thing to the marketing of fungus, but it's also put the word fungi, mycology, mushroom in front of millions of people across the planet in a good way, because all publicity is good publicity. The problem that we have to tackle is, as scientists and tool makers, why do you want to use our tools? Imagine the gold miners and Levi Strauss in 1849 telling people, you need our shovels, you need our jeans, you need our pickaxes. Why? Because there's gold out there that you want to dig up. They already knew that. The hype of the gold rush was there. The tool people took advantage of that and made more money on the tools than the gold. If that hype wasn't there, no one would have bought jeans and shovels and pickaxes. So we have the shovels, the pickaxes, and the jeans we're building. The hype is starting, but we also have to do the marketing game to make people want to have these tools for a certain reason, whether it's food or medicine or money.
Because I really think I understand what you're doing and what you're going to provide for the if there even is an industry of non-recreational use for mushrooms. I mean, the nutrition, but there's fuel, there's decomposing is actually use, right?
I mean, every pharmaceutical you've ever heard about at some point interacted with fungus, whether it's made by fungus, tested on fungus, or is a byproduct of a fungus.
So on your website, are there any videos or any diagrams that show from the forest to the consumer where you're in the middle with this database? Do you have any such thing like that? That way somebody can get the full chain of events.
In the scientific literature, there are things like that, but our company is not put in that chain yet. But that definitely is something I will work on to visualize.
Because I really dig this, and that way when I explain it to people, I have that, because I think in pictures.
Yeah, and like I could show you a million charts of a spore to a mushroom to someone bringing it to a lab, and so I do need to make some visual aids to kind of inject that and go, okay, no, we need this middleman to be the segue between the forager and the lab, because that's where the money is in convenience. A guy that finds a mushroom in the woods is very much not going to go to a lab and put it in a petri dish for him.
Well, let's say you have somebody who's not technical. He's, let's say, a retired Marine, about 58 years old, and he can't read very well, but he just thinks in pictures. Is something like that anywhere on your website with your branding available? That way, maybe he has an 8-year-old close to him who could maybe look at your website and then transfer the knowledge to that retired Marine.
Potentially. And it's going to be something we're going to constantly be working on, that visual marketing, not just me explaining and other mycologists like me explaining the importance. The brand and the visual education of the public is an important thing, and that's something I have been working on, and I will continue to be working on it as an entity, because that's our third job. It's not necessarily the ask. It's almost a responsibility. It's our responsibility to get good people. It's our responsibility to get money. And then the third responsibility is to make sure the public is aware of us and what we're doing. Good. So I would say our asks are our responsibilities. If we don't succeed in good people, good money, and good marketing, the benefits of fungi are going to be lost upon many people on the planet.
Okay. We have about 5 minutes left. We might go over that. I don't know, but let's get off the mushroom world.
Okay.
And let's let our audience know a little bit about you.
Okay.
You were raised with your dad was a Marine.
Yep.
You went out into government, but you were techie from the jump because your grandpa was an electrical engineer. So you got the STEM, I would say the teams, because you're a musician as well, right?
Yep.
Teams is the acronym: technology, engineering, arts, math, and science. You have guitars in your room here, your office. So let the audience just know, about you.
Well, I very much find myself rooted in military life, because my mom was the daughter of a Navy electrical engineer. My dad was a Marine, so my home was structured in the military way, in how I spoke to my parents, how routine was done, where we went to go watch baseball games. Where I bought my first Nintendo was from the Navy Exchange. So I'm immersed in the military world.
Have you been around the world?
Unfortunately, no. I have been around the entire Pacific Rim. So United States-wise, I have lived...
What's that, like Okinawa, Japan?
No, I mean, at least statewide, I've lived in Hilo, Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
I've lived in Waianae, Hawaii. I've lived in Kodiak, Alaska. I've lived in North California, Portland, Oregon, Washington, San Diego, San Francisco. Okay. The entire United States touching the coastline, I've been there.
Okay.
And spent many months of each place and years there. So I've lived in Las Vegas for 10 years, actually. It's where I ran my Bitcoin business previously, because of the tax environment and because of the gaming world, where money and gambling meshed well. So the military life kept me here, but it was technology that let me leave.
Are you allowed to say gambling anymore? Don't they call it gaming?
Gaming?
Yeah.
Oh my God, no, I still consider it gambling, because I was raised in a generation where video games and gaming is a very different industry. You know, if you play Fortnite and you're on Twitch and you're getting paid to do that, you're a gamer. But if you're playing craps and roulette, or you're a dealer, it's different than being a drug dealer, than dealing dice and roulette balls.
Exactly.
So the words are important still. I think it's gambling forever. and Ben Siegel and all of the guys that built the Flamingo in Las Vegas would call it gambling, so I call it gambling.
Far out. Okay. How about 3 words that describe you? That's not the first one.
No, I'm very curious.
Curious?
Yes. My entire life I wanted to be the first guy on Mars, and it wasn't because I'm trying to go kill myself on another planet, or because I love adrenaline. Or
so that's the first word, curious.
Curious.
Let's get. We're almost at the end of our time here. Second word.
Angry.
Curious, angry. Okay.
I've been very angry at the way the world structures work, business structures, government structures, science structures, and I would say that's my biggest motivation in business, to change some of those things, improve their designs.
Okay. Number 3?
I think curious, angry, and optimistic.
Okay.
Very optimistic about the potential of the future. Technology has never scared me. It has always made me look forward to Tomorrowland. Spent enough time at Disneyland thinking that was the way the whole world was going to be, was Tomorrowland, with spaceships and monorails and vegetable gardens walking down the sidewalk. And there's some places in the world that are like that, but the majority is not yet. And I think that falls on the entrepreneur to do that.
Yeah.
So I feel responsible by thinking that way, that I have to do some of those things.
Having known you maybe close to 3 months now, 2 months, whatever, I would add a word, actually 2 words, accomplished and competent.
I appreciate that.
Because a couple, I would say at least 2 minutes before this podcast, I went over your biography, so I would come in here so well informed. And that's what I get out of all those different job experiences.
Yeah.
You didn't stay cozy in a cubicle, the same thing.
Never.
You pivoted, you started with nothing, and you produced excellence. And that says a lot about you. And I think really needs to get communicated to somebody that wants to invest in your company.
Yeah.
About maybe they don't want to know about all your experiences and details, but they can at least know those 2 words. Those 2 words light up in their head.
Yeah.
You have accomplished something. You've worked well, unsupervised, which is probably your best.
It's a good skill.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you produce results. So
Yeah.
I've enjoyed visiting with you this afternoon.
I appreciate it.
And once again, could you say the website where people can find out the world-changing use of non-recreational, what would you like to say, non-recreational use of fungi or mushrooms?
All fungi at some point would be a mushroom. It's kind of like saying all canines are dogs. They're very similar words.
Oh, okay.
Okay. A portobello over a shiitake is a poodle over a German shepherd. But they're all canines. They're all dogs. They're all fungi. They're all mushrooms. When it's not mushroom, it's in the ground as mycelium. When it decides to reproduce, it grows into mushroom. So those words mean something, but to generalize to the public what this thing is, I think fungi, even though it sounds like a very clinical, medical word,
or dirty,
it's got to be the word that needs to be remarketed to the world, because that's what it is. Mm-hmm. We don't call dogs fish; they're dogs, and all mushrooms are fungi. And whether it's mold, mildew, mushroom, it's all fungi.
I think I like fungi better. So we'll leave it at that, okay?
Sure.
Are we going to talk again on the podcast?
Anytime.
Because the world needs to know your message.
Yeah.
Okay? And
that's what I'm here to do.
This will be one method is our podcast. It's been great working with you.
Thank you for having me, man.
If you were in the studio with us right now, you would see us hugging, shaking hands, like we're just like bonding like total bros. So, do you have any closing words to say?
Well, you smell nicer than me, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, your lovely secretary said that too. Boy, I was about ready to forget about the podcast. I was like totally distracted. You know what I'm saying?
I would advise everyone, if they've never heard about mushrooms or fungi really in detail, to go watch 2 things. Fantastic Fungi, which will talk about the beautiful benefits and the science of fungi, and then go watch the entire show, The Last of Us, which will show the horrific side effects of not knowing what fungi is.
How about The Blob? You ever seen that movie? About that red slime?
Pretty much that's a fungi.
Yeah. That was a great movie.
What's the movie where the plant, eat me, Seymour? What was that? the talking plant where he eats the guys, the giant, it's from the 80s.
All I remember was the Blob. That was classic 60s.
All of those
slime.
monsters, they got fungi in there. That's my point.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you very much for our time. We're brought to you once a week, once a month. We'll figure it all out. We're brought to you by the Bees That Don't Fly, Wannabes. And we're also brought to you by, do you remember our other sponsor? I just forgot.
It was
the
a
ships that don't float,
Yeah.
called partnerships.
Yeah.
Thank you. We'll see you on the next time.
See you later.